Welcome back to the Random Evil series. I'm Jennifer Irene Stewart, and in this series, I'm reading and exploring chapters from my book, Random Evil. Not Everything Happens for a Reason, where we take a thoughtful look at suffering, meaning, and the cultural pressure to explain pain too quickly. Let's begin. Chapter 2: When Meaning Becomes a Weapon. There is a subtle shift that happens after tragedy. At first, people offer sympathy. They bring food, they lower their voices, they say they're sorry. But after a while, the tone changes. The questions begin. What is this teaching you? How are you growing from this? What's the lesson? The assumption is rarely spoken outright, but it lingers in the air. There must be something here for you, and if you can't find it yet, you will. Meaning-making is one of the most deeply human instincts we have. Psychologists have studied this for decades. When people experience disruption, loss, trauma, illness, the mind begins reconstructing a narrative. We try to integrate the event into our understanding of ourselves and the world. This process can be stabilizing. Research on post-traumatic growth shows that some people do report increased resilience, deeper relationships, or clarified priorities after hardship. That finding is real, but it is often misunderstood. Growth is not guaranteed, growth is not immediate, and growth is not morally superior to survival. What begins as a natural attempt to understand can quietly become a demand. Find the reason, extract the lesson, upgrade your consciousness. If you cannot do this, the implication becomes uncomfortable. You are resisting, you are spiritually immature, you are stuck. And this is where meaning becomes a weapon. Not because growth is false, but because obligation distorts it. We admire the person who turns pain into purpose. We are less comfortable with the person who is simply broken for a while. So we ask them to hurry. Tell us how you're stronger. Tell us how you're wiser. Tell us what this gave you. Because if suffering must yield enlightenment, then the universe remains efficient. Nothing wasted. I have sat in conversations like this more times than I can count. Sometimes I was the listener. Sometimes I was the one being studied. I remember one season in particular, not dramatic, not cinematic, just destabilizing in the quiet way life can be. The kind of disruption that rearranges your sense of solidity. Within weeks, the tone of conversations shifted. At first, people asked how I was sleeping. Then, almost predictably, they began asking what I was learning. What is this teaching you? I could feel the expectation underneath the question. Not cruelty, not even overt pressure, just discomfort. An unspoken need for this to become something useful. And I found myself searching for an answer I did not yet have. Not because I believed there was one, but because I could feel that I don't know would disappoint them. That is the subtle moment when meaning stops being discovery and starts becoming performance. It is not loud, it is not aggressive, but it nudges you away from your own timing. And timing matters. In cognitive psychology, there is a well-documented bias toward internal attribution. When something negative happens, especially in cultures that emphasize personal responsibility, we tend to search for our own contribution first. This can be adaptive when it leads to course correction. It becomes corrosive when applied to experiences outside our control. Consider how often spiritual language merges with personal responsibility. You manifested this. You called this in. Your vibration matched it. On the surface, these ideas promise empowerment. If you created it, you can prevent it. But beneath that promise is a quiet accusation. If harm arrived, you participated in its arrival. For trauma survivors, this is not theoretical. Self-blame is one of the most common post-traumatic responses, particularly in cases of interpersonal violence. Survivors already struggle with misplaced responsibility. To layer spiritual causality onto that vulnerability is not empowering. It is destabilizing. Neuroscience offers a useful lens here. When someone experiences trauma, the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain, becomes highly activated. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for narrative reasoning and integration, becomes less accessible in the acute phase. The body reacts before the mind can interpret. If we push someone into abstract meaning-making while their nervous system is still dysregulated, we are asking cognition to override physiology. Insight does not calm a body in survival mode. Safety does. Time does. Regulation does. Meaning, when it comes, tends to arrive later, and often quietly. There is also an uncomfortable truth. Not every painful event contains a transformative lesson. Some events simply injure. Some losses do not redeem themselves. Some experiences subtract more than they add. To insist otherwise can become a form of denial. There is dignity in allowing a person to say, "This hurt me, and I do not see a reason," without correcting them, without reframing it, without implying that a higher perspective would fix their interpretation. Meaning-making is powerful when it is chosen. It becomes violent when it is imposed. This is not an argument against growth. It is an argument against coercion. If insight arises organically, it tends to feel spacious. It softens the memory rather than tightening it. It integrates rather than overrides. But if meaning is extracted under pressure, it often feels brittle, performative. You can hear the strain in it. I guess this happened so I could become stronger. Maybe. Or maybe you became stronger because you had to survive something unfair. There is a difference. One preserves cosmic design. The other preserves human resilience. And resilience does not require destiny. It requires adaptation. There is freedom in recognizing that meaning is optional. You are allowed to survive without philosophizing. You are allowed to grieve without upgrading. You are allowed to say, "I don't know what this means," or even, "It doesn't mean anything. It just happened." That sentence can feel radical in spiritual spaces, but psychologically it is stabilizing, because it removes the hidden evaluation. It removes the pressure to convert pain into enlightenment. Healing is not a thesis statement. It is not a testimonial. It is not a brand. Sometimes it is simply the gradual return of appetite, the ability to sleep, the quiet moment when the memory no longer hijacks the entire day. Those changes matter more than metaphysical clarity. Meaning may come, it may not. Either way, your worth is not measured by your ability to extract a lesson from devastation. Growth that is forced is not growth. It is compliance. And compliance rarely heals what was wounded. Sometimes the most mature response to suffering is not, "This was meant to be," but, "This happened, and I am still here." That is enough. That's where we'll pause for today. If something in this chapter stirred a memory, a question, or even a little discomfort, you don't have to resolve it tonight. Sometimes clarity comes slowly, after we've had time to sit with what we've heard. If this conversation resonates with you, you're welcome to follow along as we continue exploring these ideas in the next chapter. Until then, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video.